What is up? The Earthbound RPG tutorial. You'll need to understand doorways, battle room. This sends us to the battle room where our health bar will stay the same if we lose health. It would stay the same if we went back into that battle sequence. I'll have more parts to this tutorial, like how you can do double enemies in the same scene. We'll do all that also. This is the doorway that sends you back whenever all his health is lost. It sends us back through the player doorway which is in the microchip of the player, just in case you want to use that checkpoint within there. And I'll show you guys how you can use checkpoints to make it to where your position is saved, so that way whenever you come back to this level you don't have to re-walk all the way back to the same position. It's just like a save file, sort of. So I also am going to be making a save file tutorial soon, and there's going to be a part 1 and part 2 for it. Let's go ahead and begin with all this and show you guys what's going on here. Whenever you fight the enemy, I have it to where the enemy does not get destroyed in this scene. Usually if you were to win in this scene, the enemy would get destroyed, and then a checkpoint would activate to where it loads you up as if you didn't leave that position. But I don't have that right now, just so I could show you guys that the health bar does remain the same if you were to go back to fighting the enemy. That's why I took that out, for just testing sake of this tutorial. So I'll show you guys all the logic, how to do this, and we are going to test it out, of course. Whenever you run into the enemy, you want to make it to where your character can't move anymore, backwards or forward. So I'm just going to press attack. I don't have a mana bar. This right here is just the basic rundown. There's going to be more parts to this tutorial. So as you can see, I'm trying to make it to where my health bar changes colors, so that way it's easier to see that we lost health whenever we come back to this room. But you should be able to tell. I think one more hit would have did it. So this is persistent health bars, at least how I do it. This could all update and become easier. And it's pretty easy though. As you can see, it stays the same. We'll give it one more attack, then we'll just do the special. You can also have cameras like moving around during attacks like Pokemon, if you like that sort of thing. And that was just a emitter. So one more fight, just so you guys can see. And our health is the same. So yes, it works perfectly. Let's go ahead and start off with the room where everything is compiled. It's actually not that much logic. If you want the enemy to be destroyed, let's go ahead and show you guys how this works. We're just going to put this to, I think it was at 1. So whenever I show you guys this part, I'll show you guys that the checkpoint works. So here's how I do the checkpoint. So if you want to save the position after you defeat the enemy and then make the enemy destroy. So there's a persistent variable within the battle room called dead red 1. If that enemy is defeated, then it raises this persistent, put it in persistent in both rooms, this room and the room where you fight it. If it's equal to 1, so if in the battle room the variable modifier changes this to 1, sets it to 1, and because of that you're sent back here, and once you're sent back here, if it is equal to 1, it destroys this enemy. Object destroyed sends off a signal through this wire to a action recorder. It shouldn't be too much longer than like 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Make sure this is initially off and then actually record this turning on. Then put that object destroyed inside of the power in here. And then make sure you have a click that turns this back off. while you're action recording. So you'll have it on holding X, then you'll want to turn it back off. Then have this on keep changes, and you can mess with the speed up here as much as you like. This is what will load us back into the position where we were right here. That way we don't have to re-walk all the way over here. This on switch is also inside of respawn. So it's very important to put that in here also. So now it'll respawn to the closest checkpoint, which is this one. If you're fighting different enemies, you want to make sure that if you clone this enemy, that the number is different for whenever it comes back to the room. That way, if you fought an enemy that was cloned up here, this one doesn't get destroyed. With this one, it's just this one that'll get destroyed. So make sure your whatever variable it is that detects whenever you have defeated the enemy, make sure it's different for each enemy if you want them to specifically be destroyed, because that way it'll know that, you know, you just fought that enemy instead of that enemy, and it'll destroy the right one instead of them both being destroyed. All that great stuff. And then it'll activate the right checkpoint, and not all the checkpoints, because this character is going to teleport to the closest checkpoint. And as long as this is off, and you want this off initially, what you can do is plug that into the power of that, then you should be good. You should be good. So how do I have it to where the enemy detects us and we're going to the next room? So there's a few doorways in here. The start game doorway, you can put one in yours for that. That way, whenever you're compiling the dream knows which level to start you at. I also have this turning off the imps, the global game setting gadget. And I have a player tag inside of here. It's around behind here. And also put it right there. You might have to put it on behind there. And then I have his HP player, you know, this right here is the health amount. Put it on persistent. You shouldn't have to make it 100. Just put it on persistent. And then make sure this is turned off, I think. You just want it on persistent. HP player. That right there. And you might be able to delete this, since we're using a different thing for our health bar. Then this right here is the player doorway. Put it on entrance, and this can work as a checkpoint the same way that this works as a checkpoint. So next, all this logic up here is it came with this. The only logic that I really think that I added was this, 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 and this. So that's what we will look at. So there's a trigger zone. If homie walks into this trigger zone starts, so put the detected into start, put how it's going to be detected. I'm using the player tag, so put a tag in there, name player. Make sure if it's capitalized, you have a capitalized right here. And if that tag is detected, which is probably why probably want to do this. So if that tag is detected, it sends off a signal to the timer, start timer, and also sends off a signal to a keyframe. This keyframe should be setting the movement and movability to none. And it should be lowering all the speed options, and just in case, you might even want it to lower that. And of course, turn off the movement right there also. It might be okay to put this on keep changes, since it's not going to be on keep whenever you come back to the room. So if you're still able to move, try putting it on keep changes. And if you're going to use labels for it, make sure you label it right here after pressing L1 and square on the puppet. You might have to press L1 and X a few times. And then you should be good. If it is non-collidable or anything like that, make sure you have this on. So the signal's going into start timer. It's also going into the enemies. Press L1 and square. If this doesn't pop up, then press L1 and X, then L1 and square again. Just like that. That's what you would do with him also. So if detected, the detection is plugged into turn towards, and it's also plugged into look at. Then put player right here and player right here. Whatever tag is in your puppet that represents where your character, is. Then right here, the timer finished, plug that into follow. That means if there's a follower microchip in here, you don't want to delete that. You might want it off. You might want to turn it off if you do have a follower microchip in there, but I think this goes off of the follower microchip. Then you want to set this lower, like 0.8, that way your enemy will get closer to you. So lower this if your enemy is not getting close enough. And this should be like 3.4. That's the pause between it following your character. And the detection is what starts the timer. And then this is plugged into the follower on the left side. Then our timer. What's this timer for? Our timeline. Timer finished, plugged into the power. We have a keyframe. We have what sends us to the battle room, so label this so that way you can stay organized. L1 square, label your doorways up here. And this one should be an exit, or you can put it on two-way. Make sure you have a wiper. These are my settings, what I have it on. If you like my settings, here you go. And then I should have it on once to mess with the speed. Let's see here. What's this doing? I believe this isn't really doing anything, so I'm going to delete it. Before I delete it, let me just double check. No, it's doing something. It's doing something with this one. Okay, so this keyframe is making your enemy movable. That way it will move towards your character. So make sure whenever the room starts that this is on unmovable. You might have to also switch that up here also. Right here. And that should be all this is doing, is making your enemy movable to where it will walk towards your character. You might want to put this on keep changes. So whenever the room starts, just make sure your puppet is non-movable. And then during that timeline between the battle starting, make this turn it movable during the timeline. That way it walks towards your character. Then at the end of the timeline, have your doorway that sends you to the fighting room. This is our HP. It's our health manager. We shouldn't need that. And this should be how you compile everything to get your classic RPG started. Let's go ahead and quick save it. We are going to save this. Rewind it. Play. Here's our battle room. Now I haven't tested this checkpoint how I have it set up right now. Hopefully it just works. Yep, everything is working perfectly. So that's how you do all this. Hit respawn to set that checkpoint. And this checkpoint is only on during this duration of the action timer. Action recorder having this turned on, and this turns on whenever this enemy is destroyed, and this enemy only gets destroyed if this is the right value, and this becomes the right value equal to 1, destroy this enemy, whenever this enemy is defeated. The victory animation, have the animation for it being defeated. Then there's a variable modifier. Set this to 1. Set. And then you'll also want it right here set to persistent. Make sure this is off and this is off. And you want it persistent in the other room, and that's how that is working. It's also giving us EXP right here. 26 current EXP plus, and now we can go ahead and talk about the battle and how this works. I might just load up the other video of the classic RPG. It's basically this, but I'm going to talk about how I have my level up system now. It's actually a bit easier, far a bit easier. So in order to see everything, I think I'll have to. Oh no, they're why are they so big? What the heck? Okay, this is what I was looking for. It's hilarious. This is the RPG stuff that I have now, right here. So this is how you do your level ups and stuff. So I'm gonna press L1 and X on it. EXP needed, plug that into the bottom part of the calculator. Then current EXP, plug this into the top part. So if this your current EXP is greater than the EXP needed variable, put both of these on persist and put them in each level. You can just put them in your character microchip, but make sure it's in every dream, just like the battle variables will need to be. Then, greater than, increase level, powered on by 1. If your level is increased, make sure this is on persist also, turn that off, and put this in your character microchip also, that way it's in every scene. So if level is increased, there's a variable modifier, current EXP, set that to 0 when powered on. If your level is increased, raise your attack by whatever you want to raise it by. If your level is increased, EXP needed, this gets raised by whatever you want to raise it by. If your level is increased, and it also sets your current EXP back down to 0. That way you have to keep getting more EXP to get your level up each time, so you can raise this as much as you need to. If your level is increased, it increases your defense. If your level is increased, it increases your current EXP. Yeah, you shouldn't need this. If your level is increased, it increases your health. So you'll want to make a way to where your max health value gets increased, your persistent health. And I'll show you guys how to make that now, but this is how you do the level ups. Really easy, really simple. And then when your enemy dies, just make it to where your current EXP variable is increased. Then once it's greater than or matches this, I'm using a greater than, then you'll get a level up and it'll reset everything, raise this higher to where it's more of a challenge. And that's right here when you defeat it. Make sure everything that I said is on persistent, 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 persistent. So how do you make health bars? Well, you'll need a text displayer. Press space in here. This is this. Make sure you press space in here. Make the color right here. Turn this off. You can turn off all this other stuff you want to too, but make sure this is this and this is this. That's what puts it up here. Then what you want to do, pull out a timeline, make a keyframe, the dot that's of it, make it over here, and then with this keyframe, press L1 and X, and record yourself dragging that over. And put the dot like right here, the dot that was over here in the beginning. Then what you want to do, pull out a counter, HP player, make sure this is on persistent just like in the other room. Put that into the counter's current count. And then count progress, put that into the playhead, and that's how you get your health variable. Now, that should be everything. I'm probably just going to have the classic RPG tutorial video play now because I think that's a really good video, and I think I'm just going to have that play since I already have it done. But this is everything that you need to make the Earthbound type game. The only thing I may have left out that I didn't do in the other video that I'm going to show is how to hurt the enemy. Put a health manager right there for your enemy. Make sure it's hooked into this object. Label this object as foe. And then no more health, pull out a timeline that disables the controls within this timeline of your control sensor that you will see right here. This is what makes us go up and down with the attack and special. Disable that. Get your EXP. Set the dead red to 1, or whatever variable is needed to destroy it in the previous room. Set the back doorway right here. It's an exit. This is the animation for when he is defeated. And this right here, you shouldn't need this, but if you do, this keyframe is to turn off all the animation stuff within the microchip. You can also, if you need to, have it turn off procedural walk and all this stuff right here. That's what that keyframe is. Press L1 and X on and then just switch off that stuff. So no more health. Put it into the power of victory. Set this to once. And then make his max health however much you want to. Turn down the cooldown. Make him as hard as you need to health wise. Then during your attack, pull out a health modifier. Have it sense the label foes. If he is invisible, turn these on. And we just labeled it foe, so that's how that works. This is how much damage you're doing to him. Impact, zone or impact. I'm choosing zone. Continuous, all that great stuff. This is my settings right here. And with the health manager, I should have it also plugged into this character. Like right here, there should be one for the health manager. But with the health modifier, you want to pull this dot and put it around where this is at. Where this in your enemy is at. And affected objects is plugged into our enemy. And that can be found right here. So that's how the enemy is getting hurt. How you are getting hurt is a variable. HP player, increase it. So every time you get hurt, you want it to increase. And put this in every, however much damage each skill does, put that in every animation sequence during the beginning. The harder the enemy, more damage he does. And to get rid of imps, just global game setting, gadget, and turn it off. You can also turn it off on a camera. And this should be the other stuff that was not in the other video. So, this is how you make persistent health. This is how I do the level up system. And I hope this helps you guys out. Here is the previous video for the classic RPG to show you guys how and what all this stuff here is for. I really hope this helps you guys out. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Dreams of Untitled YouTube, and here is the battle sequence tutorial. What is up, guys? Thank you guys so much for choosing my tutorial. The control sensor that I talk about, the X button is plugged into the B of both of these AND gates. I think I may have left that out, and that's very important. The result is plugged into one timeline, which is a different set of attacks for you and your enemy, and the result for the first AND gate is another timeline, which is a different attack for you and your enemy, allowing you to make easy AI for your enemy character. Also, whenever I talk about health modifiers or you losing health for your main character, put that inside of the timelines instead of outside of the timeline, inside of the main sequence timeline. The reason you want to do that is because then that allows it to where each attack that your enemy uses makes it to where your main character can lose a different amount of health. And if you want to add variables like defense and stuff to it, just check out my RPG and level up tutorial. It'll show you how to make variables for your character when you level up and get stronger. And I think that's about it. Other than that, there's a camera right here that you may need. You can turn off the imp right here. And you can also turn off and hide imps inside of a global game setting. You just want to turn that off. That's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and get to the main parts of the tutorial on how to do this. What is up, guys? Do not forget to subscribe, follow me in Dreams. I'm Young Text YouTube on Dreams, Young Text on Twitch, and Young Text on YouTube, of course. So how do you make a classic RPG in Dreams PS4, a strategy game, turn-based? And whenever you're choosing your attacks, if I was to choose special, then the enemy would have different attacks lined up than if I were to just choose attack to where it's got an AI. The enemy that we're fighting has an AI. Look up my persistent health bar tutorial, my how to make lives tutorial. You'll want to learn how to make lives because you can use that as easy mana bars. My how to level up tutorial and my Dreams Ps4 Rpg tutorial, my Dreams Ps4 level up tutorial, my Dreams Ps4 persistent health tutorial, and my Dreams Ps4 live tutorial. You can just type that in on YouTube. They go right together with this tutorial perfectly, and they'll probably pop up at the top of the screen up there. So just to give you an example before we even start the logic behind everything, so I just pressed X. Let me do something real quick. Let me rewind it now. We'll get into why that just happened. It won't happen anymore though. So if I use special again, the enemy will choose a different attack. Now if I use the attack string, the enemy has 2 attacks to choose from. You can make more if you want to, but it's not the same attack string for the enemy AI as if I were to have chosen special. And you can make more options for your attack selection, like if you want to make a heal and stuff like that, you can make all that if you want to. This right here is just the basics so you guys can know how to do this very easily. Okay. I'm going to start it out by putting this on none. You won't want to do that for yours. I'm just doing that so it's easier to explain the tutorial. I'm going to start it out with the timeline that I did that made it to where I could do the attacks for each character. So if I attack, then he attacks. That's what all this is that I'm about to show you. I have a timeline, right? Whenever you choose the attack option, this timeline plays. This is your attack. This is the enemy attack. While this is playing, the on switch deactivates the controls to where you can't press X anymore to use an attack. So put that into the deactivate control setting in your control sensor right here. Disable controls. That way the whole thing has to play through in order for you to be able to use your attack again. You'll also want to make it to where you lose HP when whenever, you know, your enemy attacks and your enemy loses HP whenever you attack. All you'd have to do that is put a variable modifier that modifies your enemy's HP right here, and a variable modifier that modifies your HP whenever your enemy attacks around here. You can also use variables for health. I recommend using variables for health because it's easier to make RPG games that way. And look up my persistent health bar tutorial. Very easy, guys, very easy. What's allowing the enemy to switch his attacks every time this timeline plays through, so like if you press attack once, then it plays through and it chooses that attack, but if you press it again, the next time it switches to that one. What's making that happen is a selector, and every time this playhead goes over this selector, then this on switch makes it move to the next output, and if it's right here, then it'll move back up to A, and if it's on A, it'll move back to B. But in order for this to work, you need the on switch exactly where the selector is, like this. Right here we have a keyframe. What this keyframe is doing is animating our hurt for our main character. It's also turning on an emitter that is the flashy sparkles, that is another hit indicator. And here's my settings for the emitter, if you like that. You might also want to turn that on also. You can mess around with everything else if you want to. For our enemy, this is what's making his hurt animation. And I just turned this up to this, so you can do that for yours if you want to also. You can also turn on the springiness and mess around with that. And what this keyframe does is turns on the sparkles for him. Should be the same settings. What this keyframe does is turns off the menu. The menu, attack options. That's really all this is doing, so you can't see it anymore. How I did that with this keyframe, I turned that down, the text opacity, then I turned this off while the keyframe was recording. Press L1 and X on your keyframe, then just press this and make sure it's off. Make sure that one's off also. Then turn this down to 0. And you can also power it off if you want to. Do that with all the settings within your menu, with all the text within your menu. And make sure it's throughout the whole timeline of when you attack and your enemy attacks. Then you just want to on switch that disables the controls for this control sensor, making it to where you can't press X while your attack is happening, like pretty much in the beginning of the video. And then I quickly plug that switch into the disable control settings right there. You want to make sure this remote control sensor is on remote whenever you're making your game. You don't want it right there. I'm just putting it right there so it's easy for me to explain the tutorial. Then your actual timeline should be set to once. You can mess around with everything else. If you enjoy Paper Mario like I do, what you can do is make it to where whenever your enemy is attacking, you could have a control sensor right here that makes it to where and check out my combos tutorial. That'll help you make combos if you're trying to make a fighting game. Also check out my fighting game tutorial. You can put a control sensor right here. Make sure it's on remote. And if you press X at the right time, and let's say you have enough speed, like there's a speed variable maybe, then you have a chance at dodging. What this would be is plugged into a timeline like this, into the power of the timeline, and that timeline can either make it to where you dodge the attack completely or you defend, and it reduces damage. And what you can do, say we have our timeline right here. X button right here. You can make it to where there's a keyframe. And let's say you're using a variable modifier, or if you're using a variable for your HP, this will work the same way. What you'll want to do is with this keyframe, go to this, and then just make it to where the health is reduced that you lose. So if you're losing 100 health while you're defending, you lose 58 because you pressed X on time. In order to make this work, you'll want to kind of align these the right way and mess around with it, but that would be how you can do stuff like that. Right way too. So let's get into the UI design that we have here. How everything lights up and powers on for the timelines to actually get your attack sequences started. So with our control sensor, I have a selector. Let's go ahead and talk about the selector first, because that's the first thing we'll need. The up button is plugged into move to next, and the down button is plugged into move to previous. Now I could have these backwards. If you have more than 2 options down here, then you can just flip that if you need to. That's pretty much what's making it to where it's switching from attack to special when we press up and down. The A is plugged into a AND gate. It's also plugged into the brightness, the text brightness of our attack button. So whenever we are hovered above A, this lights up a little bit. You want to move this up to 14 or somewhere around there. The X button from our control sensor is plugged into the B of the AND gate. So again, the selector, the A is plugged into the A of the AND gate, and the A is also plugged into the text brightness. When we press up, it makes this give a signal to this option right here, and this option gives a signal to the text brightness and also to the AND gate. The B gives a signal to a different AND gate's A and to the special option for the second AND gate. So if you didn't understand that, I'll say it one more time. The B for the selector is plugged into the text brightness for the special text down here. So when we press up and we're over B, this lights up instead of the attack lighting up. And B is also plugged into the A of the second AND gate. The result is plugged into of this AND gate, the second AND gate, the B's AND gate. The result is plugged into the timeline that makes our special attack happen. Thus giving us this. Put my control sensor back on remote. And then giving us this. You can look up my UI tutorial if you don't want to use the arrow sticks. In order to go up and down on my main menu UI tutorial, I show you how to use the analog stick instead. If we use attack, then the enemy has different attacks to counter us with. Because a different timeline is playing. This text displayer is blank, so just press space inside of here and upsize this if you like this, and also mess around with these settings right here. You can mess around with this if you want to, and this if you want to. So really, guys, all it is this. This is how you make the layout for a classic RPG the easy way. You don't really need any logic inside of your puppet, but you can if you want to. If there's anything that you think I left out, you can ask me in the comment section below. What I like doing with my AND gate and my timelines, once I'm actually done with the first one, I'll like group these together, and then I'll clone it. And then that's how I would make my B one. Then I put the B inside of the one that I clone. That way, since they're grouped together, all the logic that I made for the first one is the same inside of the second one. And that's why I had to put this switch inside of the deactivate controls of the control sensor right here, because even though the same logic was in here, the wiring still wasn't the same. Well, the wiring wasn't done yet, so I still had to wire it up into the deactivate controls, and that's the reason why I did that. But it also made it a lot easier for me to get everything done, since I had grouped those two together. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me in Dreams. I'm Young Tech's YouTube on Dreams. This should pretty much be it. Check out the RPG tutorial, my level up tutorial, my persistent health tutorial, my lives tutorial, my UI main menu tutorial, and just add the damage indicators in there if you know, or the losing health in there if you guys need it. Well, you'll need to, but you know, to pretty much make it to where you can win the game and lose the game. Alright guys, peace out.